So there's three things I'll go over today: types of content that is contained within AnatomyOne, how to build a customizable image atlas for your students, and then how to build a customized course outline. So what I'd like to do is focus your attention to the top of the screen. And even though we see a lot of things on the screen right now, I just want to focus on this top bar to start with about what we have within AnatomyOne. Most of you will have a textbook that you provide for your students and say either require for the students or recommend. And most anatomy textbooks for schools of medicine are regionally based. And when we created the table of contents for AnatomyOne, we started in that mindset, in the sense that we have the regions of the body authored. There are approximately 90 modules authored, or chapters is what we think of in books. Because this is digital, we'll use the word modules for anatomy. And you'll notice that the sections within regions make sense: back, thorax, abdomen, pelvis, all the way down to the lower limb. If we choose one of these, such as thorax, and click with inside, observe the chapters or modules that you would expect to find in thorax, from thoracic wall, lungs, bronchial tree, heart, mediastinum. And each of these modules contains that appropriate anatomy within a regional context. Let's go back to the home page. Next, however, is those who teach anatomy in undergraduate and some of the allied health sciences also teach anatomy in a systemic approach. The systemic approach to anatomy is teaching all the systems first. Instead of doing regional of all the arteries, veins, muscles, nerves, lymphatics within the head, they teach all of the nerves in the entire body, and then all the arteries in the entire body. And so when we approached this, we thought, well, this is digital. Since this is digital and not paper, we're not constrained by the amount of content we can put. Let's also author anatomy in the way of systemic. And so by going through this section of AnatomyOne, observe the different section headings that you would expect within a systemic module, from histology and skin to the skeletal system to muscles to cardiovascular system, lymphatic system, nervous, all the way down to the urogenital system. And then if we were to choose one of these, such as the peripheral nervous system, or just, let's take cardiovascular system. Here, it talks about the blood, macrocirculation, and also the embryo or morphogenesis of the cardiovascular system. So there we have now approximately 90 modules of regional anatomy, 150 modules of systemic anatomy. And the third thing, is the clinical approach to anatomy, is that when you are learning anatomy in a medical school, it should be in the context of problem solving in medicine. And so looking at a regional approach, if we were to choose any one of these modules, such as, or categories such as the brain, there are now hundreds and hundreds of clinical topics authored by clinicians, either radiologists, internal medicine docs, sports medicine docs, that teach us the anatomy in the context of a glial tumor, or teach us anatomy in the context of brain imaging or Bell's palsy, since we're looking at the brain and head. So there's our four across the top. And then finally, dissection, in the sense that in any medical school there should be an approach to anatomy that is through a didactic lecture-based, but also through dissection. And so if we take a look under the dissection category, it's regionally based: dissective back and spinal cord, thorax, abdomen, pelvis, perineum, all the way down to the lower limb. So let's click on one of these things, such as the back and spinal cord. In the back and spinal cord, there are simply the dissection of the back muscles and the dissection of the vertebral column and spinal cord. So let's take a look at this dissection of superficial and deep back. It'll then bring up, and then there'll be executive summary, learning objectives, followed by a simple sequence of dissection where the text is on the left and the image is on the right. And by going through each of the steps, outlining the anatomy to observe, incision lines to be made, and instructions on how to actually do this dissection. And so looking through each of these steps with highlights on the labels of the structures that are being observed as you're going. So in a nutshell then, and let me go back to our home page. So in a nutshell, what do we have in AnatomyOne? AnatomyOne is a resource that contains a regional approach to anatomy and a systemic approach to anatomy and a clinical approach to anatomy. There's approximately 450 modules here, and a dissection approach to anatomy, complete from head to toe. So there we have it. So there is now the types of content that you can see in here. A couple of things just also to highlight. Any approach to anatomy should include correlations to histology and embryology. And so within each of the regional modules, and let's choose, let's say, the duodenum is one of the regional modules in the abdomen. Each one of these regional modules includes a microstructure that includes a brief histology outline. Some people may, I get asked quite often, is this going to replace histology textbooks? It all depends on how much histology is being asked within this context. And so, for example, at the University of Utah, this actually can replace our histology text, and it is ample because there's enough of histology images to go through and to search. But if there's other people that spend tons of time, then they're going to have a real strong histology background. This will provide a wonderful foundation for them. The other question is, what about embryology? And so there is embryology peppered all throughout this entire AnatomyOne, including early embryonic development. And then each one of our systemic modules, if we were to take a look at, say, the skeletal system, each of our organ systems has a morphogenesis. We use this word morphogenesis because unlike a lot of embryology textbooks nowadays that in my opinion are more like genetics textbooks or cellular signaling, developmental dynamic anatomy, this is morphogenesis. How from an embryo do you get the skeletal system, or how from an embryo do you get the reproductive system? And we have that in here as well. So there's our content.